Yeah, I spent 15 years in the government, mostly as a project manager, and I got a chance to lead a lot of really interesting projects. But most interestingly, in 2007, I was put in charge of our web modernization, and we're an organization of about 3,000 people. So it was quite a large organization to influence, and we had a great opportunity because the entire web that we had was static. We had over, I don't know, 100,000 HTML pages, and they were all boring and out of date, no life to them, broken links everywhere. So I was already an expert at Drupal and decided that we were going to use that technology, and came up with a concept and put it all together. We built a team around it, and it took us about 3 years to pull it all off. And I think it was a great project because it was one of the first times we were using open source technology in such a wide spectrum. And we had to jump through a lot of hoops to get approvals and get senior management on board. So and by 2009 we had launched, and a lot of the government departments across Canada were very interested in what we had done, and wanted to leverage some of the things we had done. They also used us as a sort of a stepping ground to say, well, look, these guys have done it. Can we do that in our own organization? So it was a great project, and at the end of the project, I had a chance to write out what we had done and where we were going with this. So this is sort of a paper I put together, and this paper has been the inspiration for these talks that I've been giving on this subject, is try to tell people about what was the road we traveled to get there, and what we produced, and how to go about doing it in your own organization. So we'll get started. It's called The Road to Intranet Collaboration: How to Build an Intranet that Increases Employee Engagement and Productivity. So to me, I think that's what an organization wants the most, is you hire a bunch of people and you want them to work together as best they can. The more minds are better than one. So if people are working together, your organization is going to be even more powerful and is going to be able to accomplish the mission of the organization. So web technology is a powerful conductor to connecting people and engaging people and getting them to work together. So let's find out how that goes. The agenda for today, I'm kind of go through about 7 points. I'm going to talk about how content is still king. I'm going to explain how you can define your information architecture, build a dynamic navigation framework. I'm going to tell you how to unleash your workforce. And governance is always a hot topic amongst government organizations, so we're going to talk about that. And we're also going to talk about the social networking piece, how to give all employees a profile and a voice. And then finally, we'll end off at talking about collaboration and how to nurture that collaboration in your organization. So to me, your content is your business. What you do as an organization is produced in the form of reports and papers and information on your website. It's so critical to everything that your organization does. Communicating information to your employees and to your clients and to your customers is why you're there. And it's important that information is always accessible. Everyone needs access to the information that they need to do their jobs most effectively. Information must be findable. They need to be able to find information that they're missing, either through a search engine or just browsing the web or browsing your document management system, whatever the technology might be. Information must be managed. When you're running a large organization, you need to do life cycle of information. You need to, make sure information is accurate and all those things. And it also has to be timely. Something is happening, the organization needs to get the word out in a timely fashion, or else you're wasting powerful cycles. The most important thing about content is that that content becomes knowledge, and that knowledge is the foundation for the growth of your organization. So step 2 is to define your information architecture. Now, when you're starting off your project, this is where you want to start, is start to define all the content types that you think you'll need for your organization, and identify all the metadata, all the fields that each content type is going to need. And you don't have to get it perfect. It's best to start as soon as you can, get it down on paper, start bringing it to life in your system, and evolve it as you go. You need a platform that's going to be flexible, because the content that you define today is going to change and it's going to constantly evolve. So you need something flexible. The way we went about defining our information architecture is as follows. And after giving this talk a few times, I found that the feedback has been quite positive. Many people think that this is a great way of organizing content. So by all means, if you feel like this could work for your organization, you can replicate it. The first segment of information you need to define is your primary content, the backbone of your intranet website. You need to define users, groups, projects, and services. This is the brochure type information. Every intranet already has one of these today. But the trouble is that they're static and they're not maintained. They don't get up to date, and there's no life to them. But it's still critical information. And to me, if we can do all the other elements that I'm going to talk about, it will give more value to the primary content. So if you define all the users, everyone that works within your organization, whether it's an employee, a contractor, or a co-op student, all the groups, whether they're hierarchical groups or virtual groups or working groups or lateral groups, they need to be defined. Projects and services. All the services is sort of what your organization does. And the projects, many people within an organization are either working on operations. They're in a service, they're providing this particular service or function, or a lot of people in the organization are working on a project. The project might be to create a new product or create a new service or change the way an organization produces something. So if you define the projects and the services of your organization, then you've defined everything your organization does. And if you've defined the users in the group, then you've defined everyone and all the forms in which they work together. The secondary content types serve to augment the value of the primary content types. And this is where most intranets lack today, is there's no life to the primary brochure site. But if you start incorporating secondary content and things like advertisements, alerts, announcements, news announcements, you want to tell people what just happened or that your organization's been in the media, you want to advertise a particular new product that you're selling, you want to publish documents, launch events or training sessions, newsletters, polls, surveys. You've seen these kinds of content on the internet. Now to see them in your intranet is what we need, is bring these things internally. This is your corporate activity. The secondary content type describes everything that's going on about the projects, the services, and the groups. The tertiary content is for your end users, your employees, everyone in the organization, from top to bottom. Anyone should be able to create user-generated content, whether they're audio, blog entries, comments, forum topics, photo albums, questions, someone wants to pose a question, a tweet or a video. These are the content elements that you want end users to be able to create and post on your intranet. Now, the primary acts as a framework. Their job is to inform and to provide context to everyone in the organization, whether they're people that have been working there for years or new employees that walk in. They should be able to navigate the intranet and find out who's who and what's what. The secondary content types augment the value of the primaries. They liven up the groups, the projects and services, and they engage. If you're posting an announcement or an event that your project has, people want to get involved. This project might affect them directly, so they will have insight, they will have opinions, they may want to influence the direction of that project. But if you cut out that secondary piece, there's no way for end users to know what's happening in your project. So everything is important. The secondary content types provide the activity that the primary activity content types are doing, and then the tertiary lets people communicate and give their opinions. And it's a two-way communication. That's what you see, that purple bar at the bottom. This is a two-way communication, top down and bottom up. So the next step would be to build a dynamic navigation framework. So now that you've defined your primary, your secondary, and tertiary content, and everything is in place, you need to decide, before you start even creating an actual project or letting anyone blog or letting anyone post any content. We haven't created any content yet. You need to decide and build your navigation framework. What is the structure of this website? How are people going to navigate and browse through all the information? So the key is those relationships. Setting up content relationships from the secondary to the primary is the secret sauce here. When someone creates an announcement, it needs to be attached to a project or to a service or to a group. You're announcing something. It has to be announcing something relevant, something core to the organization. If you're creating a document as well, then what does this document relate to? Does it relate to my project or my service or this group? So having those relationships is going to serve as the foundation for everything. You want to build a structure that will expand with your content. So one example would be if you have a way on your intranet for people to navigate through projects, but then a project gets closed or a new project gets added, you don't want to have to go and update your menu system or your navigation every time something changes. So you want to have a navigation that's dynamic, that's basically adapting to your content, your footprint. If there's a reorg, you don't want to have to go and update all of the subgroup list. You want that to be dynamic. So navigating hierarchically, going from the CIO group to the sub-level group to the sub-level group, that should be available to people. And 10 years ago, that's all we had. And there was a big movement in the last few years about moving to a functional navigation, getting away from the org chart and start to think horizontally across the organization. But my argument is that both are required. Sometimes every person navigates differently. So sometimes someone wants to navigate top down, and sometimes they need to navigate horizontally. You need to provide both. You're building an intranet web. Links are cheap and easy. It's just a matter of cleverly finding a way in your interface to provide both forms of navigation. And the fourth advice I have is to turn your primary pages into mashups and create master pages for many of the content types. So we're going to get into that in more detail right now. The mashups. So this is kind of a mock-up of what a mashup could look like. If you don't know what a mashup is, essentially it's a page of information, of pieces of information that don't necessarily belong entirely to that page. They're pulled from different places and they're brought in together to create a new experience. So they're kind of like landing pages for your primary content. Every project you have should have its own mashup, its own landing page. Every group you have, whether it's the top level group of your organization or a social group, they should all have their mashup, their landing page. And this is kind of an example of what it could look like. You could see the two tabs at the top where you have activity and you have the about tab. So the about that's the sort of the static information, because you're going to have that information anyway, but my advice is to tuck it away. 80% of the time, that's not what people want. 80% of the time, people want to know what's going on with your group, what's going on with your project, what's going on with the service. So if they all have this kind of dynamic interface, people will get the information that they want. Each of these little sections are dynamic content listings. They're all queries behind them. The teaser with the revolving thing is a slideshow. There might be 5 or 6 elements in there, and every few seconds they turn to the next one. The upcoming events list, it's a dynamic list. This is a query that basically says, for this group, go and get all the events that are associated to this group and display them in chronological order. The same thing with documents, resources. They're all dynamic lists. So these references that we've talked about associating secondary content to primary content, are critical. The layout is modern, and you can come up with your own layouts, and you can decide if they're going to be fixed, if all projects are going to look the same way, if all groups are going to look the same way, or you can even use your technology to let them be editable. Maybe the person in charge of a particular group can actually change the layout of their page. I would also advise to turn comments off for primary content. You don't want people commenting on your group, your project, or your service. The comments should be left for secondary content types. People want to comment on the announcement or the activity that's happening within your group, not on the group itself. Master pages. So these are sort of search pages or where you can either browse or query information. Use faceted search where you can. A table display is always good, but there are different layouts that you can use. I'll give you some examples in a few seconds. You could offer multiple display using tabs as well if you wanted to. But you definitely want to tailor your master pages to the content itself. So here's an example. A master page for projects. Right? Project is a primary content type. Well, there has to be a landing page where users can go and find the list of all the projects. That's what this would be. This would be your master page for projects. And a table format lends itself well for this type of information. Here's a little dummy sample, but you can have filters as well where people could say, because you're going to have a lot of projects, you may have hundreds going on. People should be able to sort the lists by the columns. They should be able to filter and say maybe they just want to see the projects within their directorate. They should be able to filter it that way. Another layer would be the events master page. You could provide this in a calendar format. So a master calendar for the whole organization where people can find out what's going on. They could filter it as well. I mean, it likely might get very busy, so you want to be able to filter the calendar for your particular group or your directorate and say, well, what's going on in IT? What's going on in finance? Another example of a master page would be the master blog page. So you're going to need a blog feed. That's where a lot of attention is going to be put on by the employees in the organization. They want to know who's talking about what are the hot topics. So you want to have this feed. The most recent blog post should appear at the top, and it should just flow in real time. You want to enrich this information as much as you can. If you can see on the sidebar here and on the footer, we have different pieces of information that augments what's being presented. So even though this is the blog page, you want to show users what's around the corner. If you look at the footer, who are the top bloggers all time? Who are the top, what are the posts with the most comments lately? Which posts have had the most hits? To draw people's attention to popular topics. You want a tag cloud on the right, maybe to show them the topics that are being discussed. Votes, which posts have received the most plus votes or minus votes. Maybe people want to filter the list of blogs by their directorate. What's going on in finance? What are people talking about in finance or operations? So this content enrichment are things that you can add to many of your master pages as well. These are all queries that you could build into your system and set up. The home page should be a mashup as well. Your master homepage, the landing page of your entire intranet, should be the group page for your organization. Your organization itself, the top level, it's a group. So you use that as your home page. And you might want to add in a little bit of a community spotlight section, just to show how the organization is open to this user-generated content, and is a way to mix in not only corporate messages, but what's happening within the community. It's kind of a nice way to show that the organization is supporting this kind of activity. And this could be real time. Every time you refresh the page, it could show you what was the most recent user-generated content, whether it was a blog, comment, or a forum topic. The final piece for your navigation is your main menu. That horizontal menu bar at the top, is very important. That's where people are going to use that's what people are going to use to navigate and find information. You know, that situational information is key. They need to feel like they understand where they are at on the intranet right now and where they can go. You want to help people find what they need and demonstrate interconnectedness. So if you have, these are 4 menus that could work well for almost any organization. You may have your first menu as the organization itself, where you're providing links to key primary content, mashup pages. This could be, you know, the top level directorates. You could have direct links to those directorates. You could also add a few static pages of, you know, maybe the About Us page or the mission or the vision page. The next menu would be the mission. Maybe you could rename it to activity, but there are links to key primary and secondary master pages. You know, and some examples could be, you know, you flip down mission and then you have projects, services, news, documents, events, training, resources, forms. These are landing pages that people can go to find a form or to find training or to find announcements. The third menu would be the tools. You know, every organization has online tools that are useful, that help people do what they need to do. Could have links to the directory or PeopleSoft if you use that technology, your search engine, your document management system if it's online, if it's on the web, or link to the policies page. And the fourth menu is critical, is you want to have a community section where people can go and find the master pages for the blogs, you know, the FAQs, the tweets. You want a people link. You know, different from the directory. You want a place where people can go and learn and get to know other people, maybe find their skills, find their interests, and start to connect with them. Sort of your mini little Facebook browser page internally. Photo gallery, videos, the tweets page. So that's your community. Don't forget what's on the top right. You need a login capability to show people that there's a personalized experience here. Users can log into the intranet. And a search form. You need a search engine where people can search for information across the entire intranet. So now that you've got all this built, you've got your information architecture, you've got your navigational structures in place, you've got a plan for how things are going to be laid out, it's time to unleash the workforce and let content be created. So I would start with the content publishers. You want to foster a community of publishers. I would aim for about 10% of your workforce. In our project, we were an organization of about 300, and we have literally 3,000 people, and we have literally 300 people who build content for our intranet. And this is not their full-time job. Every single person doing this is doing this as a side function of their current capabilities, of their current duties. If you build it, they will come. This does not apply on most things on the web, but for your secondary content and for your content publishers, I would argue strongly that it does work. They will want access. If you have this structure in place and are allowing users across your organization to publish announcements, to publish events, to publish all those secondary content items and attach them to the primary content items, they will want to inform, they will want to share, they will want access. This is what you want. You don't want to have to go, you won't have to go and beg for people to become content publishers. They will come knocking at the door. And you build it in a way that training is required. You cannot be a content publisher without training. And it could just be a one-day-long course. And what they get after this is role-based access to create and edit secondary content. You want to control the users, the groups, the projects, and the services, those primary content items. You want to keep control of them. Creation should only be done by, one of these, your IM, IT folks, or your communications department, or your project management office, depending on the structure or the management philosophy that your organization has. You want to keep control of users, groups, projects, and services. Maybe provide a way for people to recommend a new group, or flag the fact that a project they know is going on isn't reported online, things like that, but you want to sort of remain in control of that content. The content publisher community that you're going to foster, they can enrich the primary content items by creating secondary content. That's how they have their impact, by creating an announcement and attaching it to a group, to a project, to a service. They can therefore augment the value of those primary content items. And those will appear in those mashups that we covered. And that's all done through content associations, through those references. It's all about ownership. You don't want to have your communications team responsible for creating all of the content of your entire organization. It's unsustainable. You need hundreds of people working together to maintain that corporate memory. That's collaboration. Building an entire intranet where the whole organization is able to keep everything up to date, that's the sweet spot. Now it's time to put your governance in place. And I've kept this section near the end because if you do this too early, you'll never get off the ground. Now we're at step 5. And the first steps, we've defined our information architecture, we've put the navigation in place, and we've unleashed the content publishers. We're training people. People are starting to publish content. The groups, the projects, the services are being defined, and their activity is being published online. Announcements, events are being posted. Things are happening. Now your site might be live at this point. Most likely, I would recommend that it would be live at this point. And now your users are seeing what's happening. They're seeing that there's life to the organization. And now it's time to put your governance in place before you do your social networking piece. So the premise of your entire governance has to be around the fact that you trust your employees. You can compensate for that by not allowing anonymous content. There should never be any anonymous content. You cannot comment on anything online without logging in. So employees are attaching their name to what they post online every time. And if that's the case, trust them. They have been hired by your organization. And if they misbehave, if they're posting things that are against the values of the organization, you can handle it. At least you'll know who is doing it. Adopt a passive content moderation approach. This means that the community self-moderates. If someone posts something and another person finds that post, insulting or perhaps against the values of the organization, they can flag it as inappropriate. There should be a flag as inappropriate link on the bottom of every single tertiary content. Every one of those user-generated content items should have a flag as inappropriate. And these flags would come to the right persons that we'll talk about now who would deal with these situations. So before that, you should publish a netiquette guide, and put a link to this netiquette on the footer of all your pages so it's always available. And this could be simple. It's a 1 or 2 page document that just tells people, how to behave online, what not to say, what not to do, those kinds of things. And then you want to set up your netiquette advisory committee. You need this committee. You do need some governance. You need a structure in place. You need people who are going to be able to handle those situations when they are flagged. And the members of this committee, could be a variety of things. I would recommend the Director of Communications leads it and starts it. And then you'd have, a handful of various people, maybe in the communications team, and the information management team. The IT team that's running the web should be a part of it. But there should be a process to handle those flags. And you can even nominate one person to deal with those flags on a regular basis. Most of them can be dealt with offline. Exceptions should be escalated, and that's when you call a meeting and discuss it. If it's serious, you bring in labor relations, or you bring the person's manager or director in as needed to deal with the situation. We found that in about 2 or 3 years after launch, that there was only about 1 or 2 relatively serious incidents that occurred. There was a lot of little minor things that crept up here and there, but it could all be dealt with offline. A simple reply to the person, say, listen, people found that the use of this word was inappropriate online. Could you change it? And the user that posted that comment didn't really think too much about it and just goes and edits it and changes it, and issue resolved, right? Most of them are like that. We had one situation where one employee was being very antagonistic with another employee, and it became a little bit of a almost harassment borderline. So management was brought in, labor relations was brought in. The person's account was even suspended. Some of his posts were removed. But that's the capabilities you have. If something is flagged, you can go in and ask the IT team, whoever's managing your web, to pull that content off, or if you have the permissions, you can do it yourself. So I would also avoid strict approval workflows. Those secondary content items, they need to flow. If there's an announcement to be made, it needs to get online in a timely fashion. Translation, if you have to deal with multiple languages like we do in Canada, I would argue that that's an exception, that you should definitely have a workflow for that. We put a strict workflow in place so that now we can claim that 100% of our primary and secondary content is translated, because nothing goes live if it's not translated. But apart from that, we don't have any workflows. Everything is done informally, or verbally, I should say. You put your directors in charge. Each director is in charge of their own directorate and can manage the way that they feel is best. You want to embrace the human element. You don't want to put if one director wants strict control and says, nothing should go live online without my approval, you don't want to start building in IT, technical pieces inside your intranet that are going to control all this automatically. You don't want to do that. It's a nightmare, and it really does no good. That director can still do it. They are in charge of their staff. They can nominate one or a handful of content publishers and give them direction and say, listen, anytime you post something, you make sure that I review it. That director may want to run his shop that way. Another director might be a bit more open-minded and say, you know what, I'm just going to nominate 10 or 15 content publishers. I'm going to build a community. We're going to have a meeting with them. I'm going to say, this is the way I would like content published online, get feedback from the group. If even set a couple of rules and say, listen, if anything touches this, come and see me. If not, go ahead and post, right? More flexibility. But that's the nice thing, is if you don't hardwire all these workflows in your technology and let the director decide how they want to run their shop. The other thing you could do and should do is set up automatic page expiration. Every content item on your intranet should have an expiration date. Information online is traditionally transitory. Most of that information, if not 100% of it, lives somewhere else officially in your document management system or in some document published elsewhere. The information online in your entire intranet serves as a communication, as a marketing tool. It's summaries of information. It's teasers of information. Sure, you might be linking to documents inside your document management system that are official, but most of the information is transitory. So what we've done is primary content, they usually don't really expire, but they have review dates. The secondary content items and the tertiary, we give them 6 months. So after 6 months, if they haven't been touched or changed in any shape or form, they come offline. The owner of the document can extend the life by editing it and buy themselves another 6 months. So this keeps your entire intranet fresh. All old, unused content comes offline automatically and goes into the life cycle flow. Now that you've built all of this and you have your governance in place, it's time to give your employees a profile and a voice. This is your social networking platform and capability. And it must be done on the corporate site. So many organizations fall into that trap where they have their brochure site and then they launch a blogging platform on the side or a social networking platform on the side, completely disconnected. If you don't bring the two together, you're going to have a hard time justifying the existence of that social platform and keeping people on the mission, keeping things relevant to what the organization's doing. If it's all done on one site, it keeps everyone honest and it keeps them focused on the mission. So you need a profile. Everyone should get a profile automatically. You're an employee, you're hired, you're in the directory. The website should pick up the fact that there's a new person in the directory, and a profile should be available. But it's all opt-in. All the fields are optional. You know, you might be pulling the office number and the phone number from the directory and displaying it a little bit. Use the picture from the directory. But all these skills, interests, groups, content, the status, it's all optional. You don't have to use it if you don't want. But if you do, you can enrich your experience online. The more fields, the better. Do it like LinkedIn. It serves as a fantastic example. Show off the content. So if all those links point to my page. If I post a blog, it points to my profile. I come to my profile, or anybody else in the organization comes to my profile, they can see some of the things that I'm talking about. What kind of tweets I post, what kind of blog posts, what are my skills on the right. Hyperlink everything. All of these items need to be hyperlinked. Look at the skills on the top right. If I was looking for someone in the organization to help me out with a project management question, maybe I'm struggling with Microsoft's project and I don't know how to do some kind of dependency, I could come in here and click on project management and go and find everyone in the organization who claims to have that skill. And you can do these little things, see these numbers. Just like in LinkedIn, when you endorse someone, you see that a lot, where people post their skills and people endorse this person. You can create that same capability very easily within your organization, so people can endorse each other. Maybe 9 people have confirmed the fact that I have skills in project management. But maybe when you go to the project management page, you find out that there's some lady in the finance department who has 172 endorsements. Well, maybe that's the person you want to call. Clearly everyone thinks she's the expert. So those kinds of things. You want to build that kind of power for everyone in your organization to be able to find who they need to work with and who's the right person that they need to connect with. So these hyperlinks will connect people. Everyone needs a voice. They need a way to create content and share their opinions. That's the tertiary content types. I've highlighted comments and votes because a lot of times, not everyone's comfortable with posting content online. It's a big deal for a lot of people. Some people are shy. Some people, didn't grow up with the internet and, very reluctant to even jump on board. So voting is a great way for people to just, give a thumbs up sometimes. But that's important data. The fact that someone read your blog post and gave it a thumbs up, that's important to know. How many people think that it's valuable? And maybe that shy person might be more confident voting and might find themselves start to vote for the next 3 or 4 months. And then after a while, they've been voting a while, so now they're comfortable with that. And they've been reading comments, but now it's time they want to actually post their own comment. So they post a comment. So it's sort of like a stepping stone. Not everyone will be blogging. Not everyone will be posting tweets. But it's a learning curve and a comfort curve. So you want to provide multiple ways for people to share their opinions. No training should be required. If you're an employee, you come into this organization, you log into the intranet, you should be able to create all of these things. They're fairly intuitive, and you build them as simple as you can. No training is needed, really. But training should be available. You might want to run a few workshops to teach people about the value of blogging or how to write for the web and things like that. Run some workshops. There's no harm in that. And every one of these posts that get posted online, the author should be linked back to my profile. It's a total win-win. The more your employees get to know each other, the more they will work together, the more they will produce high-quality results, the more they will contribute to the mission, and they will stay longer. You will create loyalty. They won't want to get a job elsewhere. They will want to work there because they know people. They feel like they're part of a family. That's employee engagement. Now it's time to nurture that collaboration. As people get to know each other, now they want to work together. So they're collaborating. Your organization likely already has many tools. You know, there are a lot of tools that can fall under the collaboration umbrella. You know, I mean, Microsoft Outlook is a collaboration tool. I create something, I email it to you. You create something else, send it back to me. We're collaborating. It's not ideal. It's not, 2014, but it's a collaboration tool. But there are more tools that can be provided. Instant messaging, document management system where you have version control and multiple people can collaborate. But your intranet web as well is a collaboration tool. You need to justify social networking. Measure things. Keep track how many people are tweeting and what's the value of it. How many people are, and what percentage of your organization is on board. All these statistics, especially from a senior management, can show and demonstrate value. Metrics, exactly. Metrics. They can be very powerful, so use them to justify your social networking. Extend your intranet web to provide collaboration spaces. This, I would say, is the best thing you can do for collaboration online. You may have seen some of these things. There's a lot of places where you can create your own group, and that group can be private, where only, nobody knows it exists except the people you invite, because you create it, you're in charge. Or it could be controlled, where people can know it exists in some kind of list of groups, but can ask to be a part of it, can join in, or make a request. Or it could be a public group, just open. You see groups on LinkedIn. There are groups on LinkedIn where anybody can join, and you have to be approved to the group. Have that within your own intranet. And with technology today, you can actually allow a person who's in charge of a collaboration space to even activate and turn on and off functionality for that group. You can have a mini blogging capability within that group. All sorts of things. But this could be a space where you come into this group, it's a community of interest, and you're sharing documents, you're discussing things, you're getting to know each other at a very focused level. These collaboration spaces can be very powerful for your organization. Employee engagement leads to collaboration, which can open closed doors. Someone's trying to find someone to help them do this, or someone wants to convince someone that this would be a great thing for the organization, and they want an introduction. By connecting, by being able to connect to other people, some of those closed doors can get opened for that person. It can create centers of expertise. You can use your collaboration spaces to improve tradecraft. Increase mentoring. You can have on your profile a way to opt in for mentoring. I've claimed that I'm a project management expert, and if I said with a checkbox that I'm open for mentoring, well, then basically opens up the door for anybody to ask me for help. You can have a self-sufficient mentoring platform happening within your web. You can solidify teams, and most importantly, better accomplish the mission. When people create together, they can achieve things that would otherwise be impossible on their own. So that's the presentation in a nutshell. The roadmap kind of looks like this. You start with your information architecture, build the dynamic navigation, foster the publishing community, put your governance structure in place, launch your user-driven content, and then you have now a platform for collaboration. So I could definitely take a few questions. I just want to share a couple of more things, if we have a couple minutes. The top 5 lessons learned. My top 5 lessons learned is build one and only one platform to keep everyone focused on the mission. I said it before, I won't get into it too much detail, but if you segregate these two things, you will not have the same value as you will if you keep them all together. The social networking and the brochure information all needs to be together. Your intranet must continue to evolve as technology and your organization will as well. So many organizations build a project and then they stop investing in their intranet. You need to continue to invest in it. Define your governance near the end. Don't do it at the beginning. If you do it at the beginning, you will get stuck in an infinite loop. No one will ever approve it, and you'll never get off the ground. My director of communication came to me after we had launched the project, and he told me this in confidence. He said, if I had done the governance first, we would never have done this. And he thanked me for sort of being a bit more of a cowboy and launching all this technology before he could even have a chance to even catch up. Keep in mind the 1-9-90 rule. You know, for every 100 people in your organization, there's always about one person who's going to be blogging almost every day. That person's really into it and is completely online and completely committed to it. And then there's about 9 or so people that will be blogging occasionally. But what's most important is that there's 90% of the people are watching. Everyone's watching. Everyone's reading. And that's what's important. Social networking piece, even though your senior management might say, why are we going to create a blogging platform when only 12 people are going to talk to each other? Well, 12 people have a lot of opinions, but everybody's watching, other people are commenting, and over time, more and more people will jump in. You know, 3 years later, the chief of our organization was blogging. We had directors blogging, deputy chiefs blogging, everyone was blogging. It was really contagious. And my fifth and final advice would be to use Drupal. I know a lot of content management systems, enterprise tools I've worked with. Drupal's the only one that can let you do what I've recommended in this presentation in a timely fashion. You know, sure, you could try and do it with SharePoint, but you'll have to be on the phone with Microsoft asking them for changes and paying millions of dollars and waiting years and years for that functionality. Why Drupal? 4 reasons. The entity model is unbelievably powerful. Views, panels, and the community itself. The way that Drupal is organized is by far better than any I've ever seen and quite organized. I'm not going to explain these 4 things, but these are sort of things you can Google and to learn more about Drupal, but this is sort of the 4 reasons that Drupal rocks. And my second bonus to you is that I've put a lot of thought into all of this and actually writing a book about it and hope to publish it near the end of this year in the winter. So anyone who's been a part of the webinar today, I'm going to sign you up for a free copy of the ebook when we do launch. So thank you everyone for your time.